All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a feeling that, let's be honest, a lot of us know all too well: loneliness. It's more than just being by yourself. It's this deep, nagging sense of disconnection. But what if that feeling isn't just a personal problem? What if it's actually a symptom of the very society we live in? That's what we're going to dig into.
So let's start with what this feeling actually is. And, this quote from clinical psychologist Isabel Lancer really just nails it. Loneliness isn't about the number of friends you have on social media. It's that personal, subjective gap between the connection you want and the connection you feel you have. I mean, you can be in a room packed with people and still feel completely, utterly alone, right?
And look, this is not some rare thing that only affects a few people. It is incredibly common, especially for younger people. Get this, a staggering 40% of people between the ages of 16 and 24 say they feel lonely. That's huge. It's a defining experience for a massive part of an entire generation.
And the consequences? Well, they are absolutely serious. The U.S. Surgeon General has put out this stark warning that the health risk of being socially disconnected is as deadly as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't just in our heads. It has a real, measurable, and frankly dangerous impact on our bodies.
Okay, so if this is so common and so dangerous, you gotta wonder, right? What if the root cause isn't just individual psychology? What if the problem isn't just in us, but all around us? To really get this, we need to zoom out and take a hard look at the society we've constructed.
So, to get to the bottom of this, we need to go back in time a bit, to a 19th century sociologist named Emil Durkheim. He came up with this really powerful concept called anomie. It basically means normlessness, and it's what he called the state where the shared rules and values that hold us all together start to, well, fall apart.
So what is anomie? Well, the best way to think about it is like this. Imagine society has a GPS, right? A system that tells us where to go, what's right, what's wrong. Anomie is when that GPS just crashes. All of a sudden, nobody has a map. Everyone is left to figure it out on their own, feeling disconnected, adrift, and without a real sense of purpose.
Now, Durkheim said this kind of thing happens when society changes really, really fast. He saw this big shift from what he called mechanical solidarity. You can picture a small, tight-knit village where everyone does similar work and shares the same beliefs, to organic solidarity. That's us. That's modern life. We're all hyper-specialized, but we're not necessarily connected by the same moral code anymore. And that transition, he warned, can leave a pretty dangerous void.
So, what are the ingredients for this social breakdown? Well, it's kind of like a perfect storm. You've got rapid social and economic change, so the old rules don't apply anymore. You have major institutions like family and religion losing some of their traditional influence. And on top of all that, you have this intense focus on individualism and competition, which can really weaken the community bonds that used to keep us grounded.
But wait, the story doesn't end with Durkheim. Fast forward a few decades, and another sociologist, a guy named Robert Merton, he picked up this idea and gave it a very modern update. He showed how our own society creates this unique, new kind of pressure that just fuels this feeling of disconnection.
So, Merton's big idea was this. Our problem today isn't a lack of rules, it's that the rules we do have are in direct conflict with each other. On one hand, our culture drills into us that we should all want the same things, wealth, success, the big house. But on the other hand, the system doesn't exactly give everyone the same legitimate ways to get there, like great schools or fair job opportunities.
And this sets up a huge, powerful question that's really at the heart of modern life. What do you do when society tells you to win the race, but then makes you start a mile behind everybody else?
And the answer? Well, that's what Merton called strain. It's this deep, society-wide frustration that just builds and builds from that gap between what we're told to dream of and the real opportunities we have. It's a pressure cooker, and it can make people feel like the whole game is rigged from the start.
Okay, so this is where it all comes together. How does this giant societal pressure, this strain, actually connect back to how we feel as individuals? How does it shape our choices and lead to these intense feelings of being isolated?
Merton actually came up with 5 main ways people cope with all this pressure. The most common is conformity. You play by the rules and keep chasing the dream. But then you have innovation. That's when you still want the success, but you find other ways to get it, maybe outside the law. Then there's ritualism. These are the folks who've kind of given up on the big dream, but they still go through the motions every day at their job. Retreatism is when you reject both the goals and the means. You just drop out. And finally, you have rebellion, where people try to tear the whole system down and start over. And you can see how almost all of these paths can be incredibly lonely.
Now, get this. This feeling of strain,
It isn't just some abstract idea from a sociology textbook. It has real, measurable effects on our biology. The loneliness and disconnection it causes can literally get inside our skulls and change the way our brains are wired.
Yes, studies actually show that when you're lonely for a long time, it puts your brain on high alert. You become hyper-aware of social threats. You start to see negativity where there isn't any. The reward centers in your brain actually become less active when you're around people, and you just overthink every little interaction. It creates this vicious cycle. The loneliness makes your brain defensive. That defensiveness can push people away, and that just makes you feel even more lonely.
All right, so we've diagnosed the problem on a huge societal level and on a personal biological level. It sounds kind of bleak, right? But it's not a dead end. Now, let's talk about the way back. How do we start finding our way back to connection?
Look, there's no single magic fix for this. The solution has to happen on every level. On an individual level, it can be something as simple as reaching out and strengthening the connections you already have. On a community level, it's about getting involved, creating spaces where people can belong. And at a governmental level, some places are doing really interesting things, like the UK, which actually appointed a minister for loneliness. Doctors there can even give out social prescriptions. Instead of just pills, they might prescribe joining a choir or a walking group. How cool is that?
So, why is all this so important? At the end of the day, it comes back to something incredibly fundamental about who we are as humans. As the researcher Julianne Holt-Lunstad says, our need to connect with other people, it's not just a nice-to-have. It's a survival instinct, hardwired into our DNA. It's as essential as food and water. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. We're living in this age of anomie, a time where a lot of the old rules don't seem to apply. The challenge now, for all of us, is to figure out, how do we start building new kinds of connections? How do we draw a new map together? Understanding the deep societal roots of why we feel so disconnected, that's the first and most crucial step.